questions about Mount Warning, but the first one is to Mr. Fleming. Mark Hendricks is an advocate for reopening the track, and he's written a book called A Guide to Climbing Mount Warning. It's a compelling case. It goes through the history, and I think it concludes that there is the claim that only Aboriginal men can climb the mountain is a modern-day invention. Did you receive the book and did you read it?
I understand Mr. Hendricks sent it to me, but I, as a general rule, don't accept gifts, so I haven't accepted it or read it at this point in time. But the issue is a really important one. I acknowledge that. But as Ms. Stevens said, you know, there are challenging issues here around cultural authority and so on, and those decisions, those issues need to be considered in the right context and by the right people.
I think the rules around giving gifts to bureaucrats is more about trying to bribe you. This was more a case of trying to inform you. I would encourage you to read it. It's not a long book, but I think it makes a very compelling case. You would be, and this may be also a question to Ms. Stevens, you would be familiar with the late John Roberts, who was central to the claim that only Aboriginal men can climb this mountain.
I am aware of John Roberts, yes.
And you'd also be familiar with elders like Auntie Millie Boyd. Now, she is a local. John Roberts was from Grafton, a long, long, long way from the mountain. But he seems to be central to the claim, and he seems to be the only one who's been to make this decision. He said, would you agree that he's been the most prominent Aboriginal voice, or he was now the late John Roberts?
He was from Lismore.
I understand he was from Grafton.
No, it's Lismore.
Okay, but well, he was central to the claim, correct?
I haven't been involved in this work at that level. I haven't been privy to any of the discussions by the Wollumban Consultative Group, and I wouldn't be able to comment on that.
Okay. So if Wollumban Mount Warning is primarily a sacred men's initiation site, as is claimed, why were women given major financial contracts to research and write about, first in 2001 and again in 2012 for the Aboriginal Place Management Plan? Was it because John Roberts insisted that those particular women be given the contracts?
I'm not able to answer that question today, but I could look into it.
If you could take it on notice, that would be
course.
Mr. Ruddick, can I just add, just at a sort of higher level, I just want to reinforce the fact that national parks are really important places to visit, and we encourage that, and we get over 50 million visits a year around the state. So we as an agency are obviously very supportive and promote and work very hard to promote access to our national parks. But again, as I think the Minister said, there are a range of issues that arise. It might be to do with operational matters like fire or shooting. It might be to do with cultural matters. It might be to do with environmental sensitivities. They're all challenging issues, and we're doing the best we can to balance and juggle those while still promoting access. And certainly there's a lot of investment that's gone into northern New South Wales to ensure that there are plenty of places for people to visit.
Well, but this is a particularly special place. I mean, it really does stand out. Look, I'm very pleased to hear that the National Parks and Wildlife does want to encourage people to visit our beautiful national parks. But what I am really concerned about is that this Mount Warning issue could just become the first of many, where there are other modern inventions that make up claims that only certain Aboriginal groups can climb the mountain. Do you think that's a possibility, that this could cascade? This could be the first of dominoes?
No, I guess that was really my point. We've got more than 50 million visits a year around the state. So there are lots of people visiting lots of places around our national parks. It's actually a small number of sites, Wollumban being one of them, where there are challenging decisions and challenging issues around access, and we take them very seriously, and we're doing our best as an agency and as a government to address them. But I think when there are 50 million plus visits every year and a lot of investment going into supporting visitation, you can rest assured that the agency and the government is really committed to promoting access to our national parks. And we know that's important for people's health, we know it's important for local economies, for local businesses, and we know it's important because it promotes awareness of environment, cultural heritage and so on. So we're trying to get the balance right, and I think the message is that there are plenty of great places to visit around the state in our national parks.
Well, I'm very pleased with that. But do you think in the last decade or two there has been an increase in these claims, in the claims of this nature?
Look, I don't have the data in front of me, so I can't really give you a meaningful answer to that.
Okay, well, now back to Harry Creamer, and I'm glad that Ms Stevens had worked with him, so you would know how much of a respected anthropologist he is. My understanding is that he says that on Mount Warning there is one, possibly two, at the most, sites that are of cultural significance, and the one that can be confirmed, which we believe is a cave on the western side, is far away from the walking track. So if we were to reopen the track, it's not going to have any impact on that cave. What would be your response to that claim?
I would say that I think that landscape values are, as part of considering cultural significance, is a really important aspect of the cultural significance of many Aboriginal places rather than just sites. But I would say that we have referred the work that Dr. Creamer has sent to us recently to the Wollumba Consultative Group, and we would consider that they would have the cultural authority to be considering that work through the lens of what they have established to be the cultural significance of the site.
Thank you. When I recently visited the area and spent a couple of days there, everybody I met across the political spectrum was appalled by what is happening about the closure of the site because it's destroying the town, and not just one town but several of them. But another concern that probably an even higher concern was that in the last 4 years, since there has been controversy over the track, that there has been no backburning on Mount Warning and in the nearby areas, and the locals were worried that if we happen to have a difficult bushfire season, and bushfires are a natural phenomenon in Australia, so we know that's going to happen at some point, that they are worried that the town is going to be very much at risk of a very serious, dangerous fire because the locals are prohibited from doing the backburning that they want to do themselves on a voluntary basis to save their town. Is there any... everybody was saying that to me. Is there any merit to that claim?
Mr Ruddick, I'll answer that. I'm not sure if you're referring to prescribed burning on private land, which is not a matter for national parks.
My understanding it was on the mountain.
So I can't comment specifically on the prescribed burning in that park because I don't have the data for every national park handy. What I will just say is that National Parks does in the order of 75% of all prescribed burning across the state.
Right.
So we work very closely with the RFS, with Fire and Rescue and with Forestry Corp as the 4 firefighting agencies in the state. When you look at the fact that we're doing 75% of all prescribed burning in the state, it's clear that we take that very seriously, that we manage 10% of the state, we do 75% of the prescribed burning, so we're clearly doing our fair share and working very closely with those other agencies. That's the approach we take right across the state. Happy to take on notice your specific question about Wollumban.
Well, I'd be very grateful if you could, because we're only a couple of days away from the Springs. The bushfires are just around the corner.
They've started.
Well, that's right, yes. Thanks. Yes.
Time to backburn now, I guess.
Yes, well, that's right. Well, I mean, the locals want to do it, but this was not just one or two people I spoke to. This was the number one concern people had when I was there. It was not they're very concerned about the mountain, but they were concerned that it's a massive fire risk because they haven't been able to backburn for 4 years. So I appreciate what National Parks is doing across the state. Backburning is an important part of living in Australia, so I'm very grateful that you will take it on notice. Now, one last question is, the perception is that National Parks and Wildlife uses the Wollumban Consultative Group to justify every decision it makes, including its refusal to reconsider any alternative management strategies. Is there any decision that National Parks and Wildlife would make independently and present it to the Wollumban Consultative Group as the preferred way forward, or does the Wollumban Consultative Group pretty much win everything that they claim?
I would just answer that by saying, of course, we provide independent advice, but we certainly respect the views of the traditional custodians.
But you would also acknowledge that there is always, in these things, there is different views amongst the local traditional custodians, as you describe them. That is a common feature, and so then we have conflict. And there's often financial incentives involved. Would you agree with that?
Mr. Ruddick, I think I'd answer that by saying the Minister's already outlined the process that she's going through to inform a decision around the future of the track.
Yeah,
She's been consulting widely with a range of stakeholders, and she will make her decision in good time. So I don't
Well, the question
necessarily
was about,
accept-
do we acknowledge that there are competing claims, not just here, but very often when these issues arise, there is often heated conflicting claims, which undermines the claim that it really is a traditional site.
Well, I'd acknowledge that there are competing claims in this space. You've outlined a number of them today. Does that undermine the significance of the site? That was verified when it was declared an Aboriginal place through a rigorous assessment process. I'd probably leave it at that.